guys, in this video we're making a 5 Nights at Freddy's cake and we're going to make a face of Freddy. Now I just found an image on the internet that I printed off and I'm going to cut around. I made sure it was a similar size to the cake that I've baked and I'm just putting a little bit of buttercream on my board. So the cake drum that I've got here is big enough for his head, including his bow tie and hat, to fit on, and also his ears. So I've baked a Victoria sponge cake that's just about the size of his face and hat, and I'm going to sandwich that together with a little bit of buttercream and then cut around my template. I'll add a basic recipe for the Victoria sponge cake below in the description box. So once you've cut around that, you'll see we're a little bit short on the top. So I'll take my offcuts and we'll put that against the top, and then we'll just trim around, just to give him a bit more height on his hat. And again, we'll do the same for where his bow tie would go. I'm using those offcuts, give it a good push against, and then we'll trim. Now, the bow tie is a bit of an awkward shape, so I'll just cut roughly around that. It's just a little bit missing there, so I'll just patch in a bit more cake. And then we'll start shaping it a little bit more. So I'm putting a line under where the bottom of the hat would be and the top of the hat, and we're going to trim so that the bottom of the hat will stick out. And we'll trim around the mouth and nose area. And then we're going to cut some out of the face, leaving the nose more raised. So I've cut my stencil now, just leaving the top part of the nose, and we'll put that in place so we've got it as a guideline, and we're going to trim below that down deep into the mouth, and we'll trim down the bow tie a little bit as well, taking it a little bit lower than the bottom of the mouth. Once we've got the basic shape, we're going to completely cover the cake in the white chocolate ganache. Now I've used white chocolate ganache, but you can actually just use buttercream if you prefer. It just hardens a little bit more, so it gives me a bit more of a firmer base to work on. Once it's set, what I'll do is trim out his eyes, put my template back on the cake, and I'll just cut around. Now you can do this before you add the chocolate ganache, but if you're like me, you may have forgotten and have to do it afterwards. So we'll take a small piece out where each eye goes so that we can just give him deep set eyes when we're icing it. And I'll just stick a little bit more chocolate ganache back in there just to cover the cake itself. And I've got a teddy bear brown colour fondant that we're going to use. But first I'm going to roll out some black fondant. So again, I've bought this ready dyed to save me dyeing the black. Roll it out thin, and we're going to start covering the hat first of all. So we'll do it in pieces. We'll do the top part of the hat, give it a good push on and trim around any bits that stick out around the edge of the board. Then we've gone back to our teddy bear brown. And I've just mixed just a small amount of white fondant in with this just to give it a slightly lighter colour. Make sure it's large enough that it's going to cover the cake itself. And just press quite lightly with your hands, just pushing it into all the folds in the cake till it goes back to looking like his face. Give it a good push around the outside edge, and then we can trim all that excess off with the knife. I'm just going to hollow out the eyes a little bit more. I'm just using my rolling pin to push that in. And then we'll trim around the top of the head against the bottom of the hat, just there. Give it a good push up so it's nice and tight against the hat. Just do the same at the bottom above where the bow tie will be. And you want to push it as deep as you can into the mouth. If it tears a little bit in the centre, don't panic too much because we're going to be adding some black fondant in there as well as his teeth. Just a slight line on the bottom lip. Just soften it a bit with your finger. And then we'll cover the bottom part of the hat, so just make sure you've rolled a piece of black. It's just long enough to go over there. We'll give it a good push over in place. And again, we'll just trim around all the edges, like so. Do exactly the same with the bow tie, making sure it's pushed in to any creases, and then you can use your modelling tool to just push through a little bit deeper to give us a bit more detail. And at the edge of the bow tie, I'm going to use my finger to push the shape in a little bit more from either edge. Roll a small piece of black that we're going to push into the gap in his mouth, and you can push that quite deep in there. And while I've got my black out and ready, I'm going to roll a piece for the nose. Start with an oval, push it to a tiny bit of a point at the bottom so it's not a perfect oval. Bit more nose shaped. I'll put that to one side while I'm working on the eyebrows. So the eyebrows want to be thicker on the outside edge and thinner on the inside edge. Keep them reasonably small. And while I've still got the black, just roll a strip that we're going to push into the eye socket. So I'll wrap that around the outside edge of the eye socket and give it a good push around with my finger. Don't worry about going all the way to the bottom because the whites of the eyes will cover that bit there that you can see. Just do the same on both eyes. And then I'm going to trim around the nose. Now, I've gone a little bit bigger than my template for this bit, and I have added a little bit of white to the fondant just to make it a little bit paler. Now, I've left mine quite thick, so the nose sticks out a bit more, but you might find that you don't need to leave it quite as thick as I have done. We'll place the black for the nose in place, And we'll just push a little line down the centre from the nose going downwards. And then we'll give him 2 white eyes. Now up to this point I thought he was looking quite cute, although he doesn't stay that way for too long. I'm going to give him some black eyelids, so just cut 2 tiny black semicircles in black, push them up against the very top of each eye. We'll give him his eyebrows. You can change the expressions just by moving them around a little bit. So you can point them upwards, downwards, see where you think looks best. And you want a pale blue now for the centre of the eyes. Now I've kept it quite pale for this bit. And then once you cut 2 circles, I'm just using a royal blue rainbow dust, which is an edible dust, just to push around the very edge, just to deepen the outside of that circle. And we're going to push that into the middle of the eye. Just do the same for the other one. Once we've got that in place, we want 2 tiny balls of black. Just push those into the centre of each of your blue circles. He's starting to look a little bit creepier now with his eyes. And then a tiny ball of white in each eye. I've got brown and black in the edible dusts. Just mix them together because I don't want completely black, but the brown's a little bit too light. And we're just going to dust on with a dry brush, giving him a bit of shading anywhere that would be in shadow, so inside the mouth, under the nose. With this one, I've not worried too much about being really neat because I want him to have a bit of a mucky look about him rather than being a nice smooth shaded look on his face. And I've gone particularly around the eyes and the mouth, under the hat, and then we want 3 black dots on either side of the nose. I've just pushed mine on. If they don't stick, you can just add a tiny dab of water to hold them in place. I've rolled a strip of white that we're going to use for the teeth. I'm just seeing if it looks like it's going to fit. I'm going to cut some little rectangles out for the teeth. This is where I cut them out and find that they're a little bit too big. So I'll trim a little bit off the top edges of them to make sure they fit nicely in the mouth. Don't worry, if it's better to cut them too big than too small because at least you can trim them down. If you do them too small, you have to just remake them fully. So I've got a few of those rectangles now to the right size, and we're going to push those into the mouth against the bottom jaw. So you want a bit of a gap between the top of the teeth and the top part of the mouth. Just make sure I've got enough shading on there. Then we want a red strip of fondant. Now I've just dyed this in a red, just quite thin. Place it around the bottom of the hat and just trim off any extra. Again, I'll add a bit of shading on there. Just use the black this time, concentrating on the outside edges. I've got some more of the teddy bear brown. Now it's difficult to see on the video, but the larger circles are slightly darker in colour than the lighter circles, and you want 2 of each. Just dint the middle of those larger ones. I'm just using my rolling pin. I'm going to cut a tiny bit off the edge of the smaller piece, insert it into the bigger one, and again cut a bit off the larger one so it matches with the small one. You can do the same with the other one for his ears. And I'm adding a bit of water to the board all the way around, and I'm rolling my black fondant nice and thin. You want it quite thin, otherwise it's not going to crease up like fabric when we add it on there. And I'm going to put that on, playing around with the folds, getting them to go where I want them to. Quite often just leave them where they end up as you're putting it on. And I'll do this in a few pieces rather than one big piece, scrunching it up as we go along, and then trimming the extra off the edge of the board. It's quite a good way to cover shaped cakes where it's a bit of an awkward shape to go around. And I think rather than leaving it just black, we're going to add a little bit of colour. So I've got some oranges and some reds in my edible dusts. Again, I'll put links to all the dusts in the description box below. I'm just going to dust these on around the edge. Then once you're happy with the colour, we can place the ears on. So leave a slight gap at the side of his head and just place them on where we want them to go. I think I'll just add a little bit of white to highlight the nose. I'll add another bit there. Once you're happy with the highlights you put on, then he's all done. Now, I haven't played the game that he's in because it looks a bit scary for me, and I'm not very good with scary things. But I hope you've enjoyed the video. Please do check out my other Halloween videos. Thank you for watching.
If you liked this video and would like to see more, please click on the images of the other videos suggested. Also, please do subscribe to my channel using the button at the bottom right hand corner of the screen. You can also visit my cake website and my Facebook page to see more cakes and ideas.